Today's video is all about buff stacking. This is the ultimate guide to buff stacking. I'm going to teach you how you can take buffs from other party members that aren't even in your party but are in your camp and stack them on your characters so that you have an insanely high armor class. You're resistant to everything. You have immunities. The whole 9 yards. Let's go. Real quick, what is a buff? It is when you have a magical power assigned to your character that gives special attributes. For instance, this character has Death Ward, so when he dies, he comes back with 1 HP. Longstrider gives him 3 meters extra movement. This character down here has a movement speed, Transmuter Stone, and Longstrider, so they can move even faster. And none of these buffs are coming from any of the characters that I have in the party. No, they are coming from characters within our camp, and I'm going to go over every spell that every character can cast, when to use it, why to use it, how to use it, and how to optimize all of it. So the very first one is Light, and Light is a cantrip, which means you don't have to spend a spell point or a spell slot, and this will cast on a character's main hand weapon, and what this will do is it will illuminate their, here, let's pull it out, there we go, we now have a sword that has illumination with light. As you can see, it is now buffed here at the bottom left, with light, and I don't need Gale in my party to maintain this buff. There are certain parts of the game that are very dark. There are enemies that do not like to be lit up. There are gear pieces that when the enemy is illuminated with light, they take extra damage and gain effects. So this is just a free buff to help you out. It's not a big one. There are some really good ones we're going to get to though. Here are all the classes, items, races, etc. that will give you this cantrip. Very easy to get. Next up is Goodberry. Now, you may be thinking, well, this spell's stupid, it sucks. I'm going to explain why it's pretty good. So you can learn this from a level 1 druid or level 2 ranger. I recommend that you make a character, and I have a fully dedicated character. I use Will in my playthrough. I know Will fans, I'm sorry, but he is my Goodberry crafter. He is the guy that makes the good berries for everybody. And these things, yeah, they don't heal that much, but there is a special interaction with an item that I just absolutely love. And that is, it's called the Brood Mother's Revenge, and whenever the wearer is healed, their weapon gets coated for 1 to 6 poison damage, and this does not count as a weapon coating, so it stacks with weapon coatings. So what that means is that I just have Astarian, however you say it, I just have him eat a Goodberry, and there we go, dipped in poison. It's that simple, and he pops a Goodberry in his mouth every time he's about to enter combat, kill people, fight anything, and it's just a free DPS boost. These things are awesome. If you're making a character to be your Goodberry crafter, I recommend, what is it called here? It is the Circle of the Land Druid, and the reason why is that you can use your natural recovery charges to recover your spell slots, so you can craft more berries per long rest. It's that easy. You could also just respec at Withers and get your spell slots back, but some people think that's a little gamey. Mage Armour is another one that I don't think is all that useful because I mostly play tanky characters, but it sets your armor class to 13, making you harder to be hit if you don't have armor on. So you wear clothing that has, like, 10 AC, and you can cast this to have 13 AC. So it works for clothing, just not light armor, medium, or heavy armor. It's level 1 Source and Wizard, and then Arcane Trickster Rogue, Eldritch Knight Fighter, and you could feed it with Magic Initiate. But the main use later on for this is to cast it on summons. Alright, so if we look here, Shovel has a armor class of 13, so he doesn't need it. But our skeleton bro here, our little skelly bro, look at him go. He's this little happy dude. He's just so happy. He's got an armor class of 11, so he's a squishy bro. He's a squishy little dude. So just run one of your wizards over in camp. I just have this one. We're going to use this guy later for some stuff. And cast Mage Armour on your skelly bro. And now for the rest of the day, as long as the skelly bro doesn't die, look at that. It's his armor class is set to 13, but he gains +3 from dexterity. So yeah, this is pretty huge. All right, he just became way tankier because our skelly bro has 16 dex. I don't know what other side. I guess he has 17. Let's see if it helps Shovel. It actually might boost Shovel's AC a bit. I am actually kind of curious. I normally just let Shovel die because he's annoying. But, yeah, let's go ahead and cast Mage Armour on him. And, hey, get over here, gnome. Do your dang job. Alright, Shovel, let's see what you got. Did he go up in AC? And he did. He got just a slightly bit tankier. So, there you go. For the whole day, they're a bit tankier. Now this one's very powerful. This is Longstrider. This increases your movement by 3 meters, which does not sound like a lot, but it is, trust me. It is a whole bunch. And here are the levels that you can learn it and the items that give it. My recommendation is just Ritual Caster it, which is a feat. You hit level 4, you get a feat on most classes, and on one of your characters in camp that will never see combat, simply give them Ritual Caster. So for Gale here, he has Ritual Caster, and he can cast, what that means is he can cast Longstrider without it expelling a spell slot. It's basically a cantrip. I don't know why they don't just make it a cantrip, but so Longstrider, I can just cast this infinitely on as many characters as I want, and again, it lasts the entire day until long rest or until the character dies. And boy oh boy, does it give them extra movement speed. So if we look here at our main character, he has a movement speed of 12 meters. Well, it would only be 9 meters without that spell. And then if you dash, it's now 24 meters instead of 18 meters. So it just multiplies and multiplies and multiplies. Every single one of your characters, if you're playing seriously, should have this buff at all times. As soon as you hit level 4, have one of your characters in camp cast this on everybody. And now combat just got way easier. You can run up to enemies sooner. You don't have to waste turns if you have melee fighters and whatnot. It's mandatory. You need this. Next up, we have Aid. Aid is an AoE or Area of Effect spell that gives you plus 5 max HP. That is to your maximum HP. It's not temporary HP. And when you upcast it, as in you use level 3, level 4, level 5, etc., you get 5 additional hit points per level. You can learn this as level 3 Cleric, level 5 Paladin. I recommend Life Cleric because it will always be prepared, and here's why. If you have Aid in your spellbook and you buff somebody and then you remove it from your spellbook, the buff goes away. This is why my camp caster, Gale, who does not ever go adventuring, it is always prepared for him because he is a Life Cleric, so I don't have to worry about that. There's a few items that also give you the level 3 version and the Absolute Talisman level 2 version, but those kind of suck. There's no real reason to use those items anyway. It's just additional health. It's really good. You should always have this, especially in higher difficulties. The next one is not a castable buff. This one is a racial trait. It's called Darkvision. So normally if you're fighting someone in a dark environment, so when you're playing the game, if you hold shift, you'll see like a little sun icon. And right now, like this one is slightly dark. This one is fully illuminated. And if that circle is completely, like, you know, there's no white in the circle at all, that means it's a very dark area, which, well, there's really none of those around in the camp to show you. But when you're fighting in melee range, or you know, in range, and you're in a dark area, if you do not have dark vision, you have a disadvantage on attacks, which means you roll the dice twice, and whatever the lowest roll is the one you have to go with, meaning you're going to miss more often. So you definitely don't want to play a race that isn't shown on the screen. The next incredibly useful spell is Protection from Poison. So what this will do is this will actually cure poison on a target, and then it gives you advantage on saving throws against being poisoned. So what does that mean? What does advantage in saving throws mean? Advantage means you roll 2 dice, and the higher number is the one you get to use. A saving throw is an attempt to be inflicted with the status or abnormality poison. So when the game is like, hey, you're about to be poisoned, roll some dice. You roll 2 dice, you pick the higher number. Also, it gives you resistance to poison damage, which we will get elsewhere, and resistances do not stack. Resistances in this game mean that you receive half the amount of damage to that damage type. So if you just had this buff and someone hits you with a poison attack, you only receive half the damage you would normally receive. And there's ways to have that damage and have that damage, and we'll go over that later. Before we continue, let's cover how to restore your spell slots, because all these buffs take spell slots, and you're probably like, I don't have no spell slots, how am I supposed to buff everybody? So, let me show you. Also, I just want to mention that Protection from Poison, that we talked about just a bit ago, again, if you remove it from your spell slot, everyone loses the buff, so you got to keep it on your prepared spells. So let's say I cast Protection from Poison on my main character. There we go. He has Protection from Poison. Now, Gale just spent a level 2 spell slot. Now, Gale is special, unlike the other characters in camp. He's a little bit interesting, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to tell him to remain in camp, and then I'm going to have someone hit me, because I have a warding bond on my character, so it's going to hurt Gale. And Gale, for whatever reason, will restore all of his HP, which also restores his spell slots when he is damaged while in camp. So, this may take a few tries to hit, because my character's pretty armored. Come on, Skelly, you can do it. 35% chance, let's go. And Boyle, there we go. So Gale took 2 points of damage, and then Gale's going to puff out his chest, and boom, he's healed. And now when I invite Gale back into the group,
What's on your mind?
why don't you join me? You'll notice that Gale now has that level 2 spell slot returned to him. And this is how you buff your entire party with all of these spells. I don't know if this will ever get fixed or patched, if it's a feature. Now, Gale, he's the camp chef. He's the guy that cooks everyone's meals. He's also got an affliction within him, storyline-wise, where he's more powerful than than what he looks like. So I think it's intentional that he can just snap his wrists and heal himself. But anyway, just use it to your advantage for infinite buff spells. The other way, which if they do patch this or remove it, is you just walk up to Withers and you respec your character and you get all your spell slots back anyway. So, you know, whichever is your favorite method to use. One of the most powerful buffs in the game that completely breaks the difficulty of the game, even honor mode, is Warding Bond. This is what I highly recommend everyone use if they want to truly make the game a cakewalk. What this does is it gives the person who receives the buff 1 to their armor class and saving throws. This gives you resistance to everything in the game, meaning you take half damage to everything in the game, every single type of attack. There is nothing that can, you know, not do half damage at this point. Damage is now split between the person you buffed and then the person who casted the buff. So Gale is my Warding Bond guy, and he Warding Bonds the entire party. So my main character, Asterion, Shadowheart, and Lae'zel currently. Later to be Minthara. But whenever those characters take damage, Gale, when he's not in the party, remember, I just showed you, he heals himself in the camp when he receives damage. So what happens is everyone now takes half as much damage, and then Gale just heals himself infinitely in the camp, so he will never die from Warding Bond. If this gets patched, you would just want separate characters to Warding Bond separate characters, because if my party of 4 walks into a big explosion, yeah, Gale's going to be hurting pretty hard, right? But this thing gives you, it's totally worth casting on everybody. So make sure you use this in all your playthroughs from here on out. There's no excuse. Daylight is just like the cantrip Light, but it's just a wider radius. It does the same thing, it just in a bigger circle. That's all that means. And here's the levels. Cleric, Druid, Sorcerer, level 5. You can read the rest on the screen. Freedom of movement, this removes stun, which we wouldn't use this for that, but it's just, you know, just so you know. But difficult terrain cannot slow you down. You know, difficult terrain is things like grasping vines, you know, lava, ice. There's a lot of difficult ground you will traverse, like kind of shallow waters and whatnot. You can't be paralyzed, and you can't be restrained. This comes from level 7 Bard, Cleric, and Druid, and you can cast this on everybody, and they can just run around all over the place willy-nilly. You don't need any kind of items that grant this ability. Just have someone in your camp cast it and stop listening to those guide videos where they're like, oh, use the ring for freedom of movement. It's the best ring in the game. No, it's not. You don't need it. It's redundant. You don't need that ring. Death Ward is also really good, and whenever you get reduced to 0 HP if you have this active, instead you come back with 1 HP. It lasts all day, level 7 Cleric, level 10 Bard. There is another spell that's similar, and this is an ability called Survival Instinct. However, this spell only lasts for 3 turns. So, again, it's the same thing, but this one you have to chug a potion from Omelum in the Myconid colony to receive. Only 1 character in the game can learn this, unfortunately. And, again, it only lasts 3 turns. You can stack it with Death Ward, and so you can come back twice. And then you could stack it with items that bring you back as well. Those are kind of bugged at the moment. But yeah, Death Ward, you should have Death Ward on everybody. And so if they accidentally get one-shotted for whatever reason, which they shouldn't with all the other buffs, it's basically insurance to not die. Now you're wondering, how again, what character should I use to cast all of these buffs? And, well, besides the Goodberry Will character, I'm using Gale for all of those cleric buffs. As you can see, Gale here is just a level 7 life domain cleric. That's all you really need to make sure everyone is death warded, warding bonded, protected from poisons, aided, freedom of movemented, etc. It's just amazing. Hero's Feast is amazing because it gives you a maximum HP increase of 12. I don't have it shown on the screen, I'm sorry. It requires a level 11 cleric. This save file is level 7. My saves got corrupted, so I'm starting over. Anyway, it makes you immune to poison, immune to disease, and immune to fright. It gives you, again, 12 plus max HP, and you can stack it with the maximum HP of aid. It gives you advantage on wisdom saving throws. So that means, again, you roll the dice twice, and if something requires your wisdom to not be afflicted, well, then there you go. But already, like, fright is a wisdom, or maybe it's concentration, I forget. But regardless, it's just a free buff. You need level 11 cleric or druid. Always cast this. Next, I'm going to be talking about Transmuter stones, and for this, I use a hireling, which you go to Withers, you can hire a hireling. So, one of them is a default wizard. I just picked him. And he is my stone transmuter, so let me explain how to level this character up, what he is, what he does. You're going to make him a wizard, and you're going to make him a transmutation wizard, and that's basically it. That's all you have to do. The stats don't really matter, or anything of that sort. But what he does, or what he can do, is he can cast a transmuter stone, which I need to cast just a spell so I can... get the ability back here. And these stones can do a whole bunch of different things. A lot of these are for resistance, which, as you know, resistance does not stack. And we get resistant to everything from warding bonds, so a lot of these are useless. However, my favorite is the movement speed transmuter stone. So this one character can cast one transmuter stone, which means he can give this stone to someone, and they increase their movement speed by 3 meters. So I'm going to cast the stone. And there we go. And then I can just open the inventory and then pass the stone over, which you can see that, well, this character had a stone already, but the stone does not become, like, the stone won't work if I recast a new one. So this one's basically non-working because this one exists. I know. It's weird how it works. But other than that, you can have a +1 to Constitution saving throws or Darkvision, which you don't really need con saving throws all that much unless you're worried about, you know, someone's concentration being broken. And Darkvision doesn't help because you can just illuminate the area. It's way easier to illuminate the area with light or daylight, like we talked about earlier. You definitely want to make multiple characters that can do this as wizards. Multiple hirelings, like I think Karlach is a wizard. She just makes another stone for people. And then later when I get Hausen, he's going to be doing it too. And, you know, you have at least 4 characters that can do this. And that way everyone gets bonus move speed. It's super handy and useful. This one here it's Shield of Thralls. Now, this one is an ability, it's an illithid power, and it's right here, Shield of Thralls. You can only cast it once for short rest, which kind of sucks, but it gives you a shield and 10 temporary hit points, so when you lose those temporary hit points, it explodes, stunning nearby enemies. So I would put this on your melee tanks, and that's basically it. I personally don't use this until the end of the game. I just don't need to, even on higher difficulties. But it's not something you could have a character in the camp that casts this, but realistically you don't, because you want your main characters to all have as many illithid powers as possible to feel Coal of the Weak, because the more powers you have, the quicker you can execute enemies. Now, this next one is incredibly niche, and what you're going to do is you're going to make a Eldritch Knight. Just any Eldritch Knight will do, it doesn't matter. And they have an ability that is called Weapon Bond, and it ritually binds the weapon in your main hand. So what you want to do is, let's say Astarion here, because a lot of enemies later on, they will use like Disarming Strike and you'll drop your weapon, or, you know, there's a whole lot of shenanigans where you drop your weapons. It'll overheat your metal and you'll drop it. So you give it to this Eldritch Knight character, and you may be thinking, well, I don't want to bond it to them because then they can't drop it, right? Yeah, you absolutely do. So here's the thing. You cast Weapon Bond, and now this weapon at the bottom left says Bound Weapon, all right? Now you just give it back to your character. There you go. And so if Astarion here gets disarmed, or if he wants to throw his weapon at the enemy, which, come on, where's it at? Yeah, there it is. So it's still bound, so if I throw the weapon at an enemy, it'll return. And Scratch was trying to fetch it there. But you can see it's right back in my inventory. Whereas if I take another character's weapon here, and I decide to throw it, like this weapon here, like I throw this sword, well, it's just going to sit there on the ground, and yeah. Oh, dog's running over to get it. So you definitely want to bind your very valuable weapons. So I have Lae'zel with a very super powered weapon, right? Early in the game, she can get this weapon, the Silver Sword of the Astral Plane. I have a video on my channel on how to get this as early as level 3. It's a powerhouse. But when she has it, all the enemy's AI will be like, oh my god, we gotta disarm her. And they will just all rush her and disarm it, and she spends every turn picking the damn thing back up. So this prevents that from ever happening. Also, I'm sick of every single, like, guide is like, oh, get the returning pike, oh. You don't need it. You don't need a returning pike. Just get any throw weapon, use bound weapon on it, you're good to go. There's way better options than the returning pike, people. Real quick, an honorable mention, which I've already made a video about, is just a level 2 wizard and a level 4 cleric that will craft you double your potions when you need to craft potions. I have an entire separate video on this kind of thing, so go check it out. All the links to stuff I'm talking about will be in the description of this video. So just scroll down, click expand, and the link is right there. There's also Bardic Inspiration and Short Rests or Song of Rests. I'm not going to talk about those because Bardic Inspiration is your first attack, so it's kind of useless, for a long playthrough. Whereas everything I've shown you so far lasts the entire long day, unless your character dies, of course, but you won't be dying with, Death Ward and all the other buffs. Anyway, let's move on and talk about a few other things that are like item buffs that you definitely want. So this is a weapon you could buy from a vendor from Roa Moonglow in Act 2 called the Drakethroat Glaive. Now, it'll just buff. What you do is you take another character's weapon and you put it on the ground, and then you cast this as your main hand. So you equip a character with it, and then you cast it on a weapon on the ground. It gives it 1 to 4 additional damage, which isn't a whole lot by Act 2, but it's still something. But here's the thing. As a sorcerer, you can twin cast this. So, because once you cast it, it's gone for the day. You have to long rest until you get it back. But with twin casting, you can cast it on 2 weapons. So now it's, 2 to 8 damage. Oh boy. You can't cast it twice on the same weapon, but for like a dual wielder or for 2 separate party members, super duper handy. The Flail of Ages is a little bit more complex to use, so this can buff a weapon 1 to 4 damage and +1 attack rolls. It's kind of iffy though. You need one of your camp characters to do this with dual wielding. So you're going to put the Flail of Ages in your offhand. Alright, so your main hand, let me show you on the screen here. Your main hand is going to be your left slotted melee, right? Sorry. It's the weapon slot on the left. That's your main hand. So you're going to put the Flail in the second slot. The weapon that you need to buff, you're going to put in the main slot and buff it. Then you can trade your main hand that you buff to whoever, needs it. And that's how you retain the buff. Also, the Flail of Ages does not stack with the Drakethroat Glaive. So don't try to stack them. It'll just override it. Next up is a better usage of Toxin. So let me show you how that works. Alright, so normally when people want to use a Toxin, you just consume it as a potion and it coats your weapon with, well, this is 1 to 10 damage. Well, that's the lame way to do it. What you want to do is you want to go to camp if you can, or, right outside a boss fight door. You're going to throw this sucker on the ground. It's going to be a nasty little purple pile. And then you want to dip your weapon into it. And now you have the same poison effect for 10 turns, just like if you consumed it. But everyone can do this. So you would go into turn-based mode, have everyone dip their weapons, and then walk into the boss fight room. Or, if it's a prolonged fight, you have... after 10 turns, you can dip your weapon again. But I don't know a single fight that lasts longer than 10 turns, like real talk, even on honor mode. So this is the proper way to use it. Now, of course, I like to throw one of these in camp for the long day, and then anytime I need poison, I just go to camp, dip my weapon, leave camp, and now I have that 1 to 10 damage for whoever needs it. It's really, really useful. And this little poison puddle will last the entire day. Don't step in it, though, but hey, I mean, we have advantage on poison saving throws anyway, and resistant to poison, so it's fine. The potions of animal speaking and mind reading, they last all day. If you really just want to min-max your buffs, you can chug both of these, once per long rest. You'll have it the rest of the day. Now, Scroll of See Invisibility lasts all day, and it does not take up your elixir slot, so that's good. But, I just have my main character have a Volo's special eyeball. So I always have this passively on my character. It does make his eye look a little weird, though. I don't know if you can see it, but one of his eyeballs is fake. So if that bothers you, just use the scroll. The scroll lets you put it on multiple characters, but, you know, I just have my main character running around, so he face checks everything. Now, lastly, these are situational, but there are times when you come across locked doors, magically locked doors, or just areas where your characters don't have flight, they don't have teleport or anything special. I always have what I call a movement wizard in my group. Look at him just, you know, puffing out his chest. He's so proud. And here's the spells on this level 7 wizard. So, Mage Armour, obviously, we talked about that at the start. I have things like Fog Cloud to blind enemies, so you can steal from them. So you can cast Fog. You can go to camp, grab this guy, cast Fog Cloud, and then have like your 3 other characters just gangbang a vendor and take their stuff, right? You can put grease everywhere before a fight, which you can cast this everywhere and then dismiss this character. There's a lot of good things, okay? But Featherfall, you can cast Featherfall on a character, then kick them out of the party, and for, like, as long as you're quick with it, 10 turns of Featherfall, it's amazing. Disguise Self, if you need to get past certain, you know, storyline things. Darkness, you can, you know, put that somewhere and sneak past like a corridor. If you don't have any stealth characters, Misty Step lets you just teleport wherever. Knock opens those magic doors. You can go invis, you know, and you know, run to a waypoint and then summon the rest of your party in. Enlarge Reduce lets you go into those burrow holes. The great thing about what is this character's name? Sir Fuzzalump, okay, is that what is he? He's a gnome, right? He is a gnome, yes. So when you cast Reduce on a gnome, they are small enough to fit in burrow holes. You don't have to transform into a mouse or a cat or anything to get into those. So that's why I have him do this kind of movement tech. And that just lets you in secret rooms and get past certain barriers. Finally, he's got Fly, Gaseous Form, if you need to get through a gate that is like somehow permalocked. I also give him Remove Curse, just in case anyone gets cursed with anything. He always has Find Familiar active as a ritual spell, because he is a ritual caster. So that you can summon a little kitty cat, meow at all the enemies, they'll all group up, and then you can blow them up with barrels, or whatever it is that you want to do. And Speak with the Dead if you really need to get intel from a dead character. This combines with Disguise Self. Let's say somehow I had this character kill somebody. Well, when you speak with the dead, they don't want to talk to you because you killed them. But if you disguise yourself and then speak with the dead, they don't know it's you, and they'll spill the beans. Now, this video is not going to cover temporary buffs, but if this video does amazingly well, then I'll have to make one about temporary buffs. And just as a little preview of what that is, like, I have a sword that you can make Seeing and then give everyone a 1d4 attack roll bonus. Whenever this character AoE heals people, he passively buffs them with Bless for 2 turns. That's a 1d4 to attack and saving throws. There's a whole lot of different buffs that you can all stack up at once, and I know exactly how to fully buff a party to the extreme extremes before any kind of tough fight. So again, if this video does well, then I will make that video. But right now, my Baldurs Gate videos are not doing well. I think I missed the boat. I waited 6 months to make these vids, and it's a little too late for me. My channel is drowning. I'm out in the streets soon enough. With that said, please leave a comment, because I really need your comments to feel a social life. You're the only social interaction I get is your comments. Please, say anything. I don't care. I just want something to read. Finally, leave a like on the video if you found it useful or learned something new. I think that's all I can really ask. And finally, on the right side of your screen, there is a video that you should absolutely click, and if you don't click it, they're going to nerf everything in this video, and you're going to be like, oh man. If they do, I'll update the first line in the comments, or the description, and the pinned comment.